George Clark dropped to one knee. Numbing cold, more toxic than a bite from a diamondback, gnawed at his bones. He lifted his head and peered through the blizzard. His hair and beard crackled with ice crystals, and a great wave of trembling nausea swept over him. If he could get to his feet and reach the dark shadow of the tool shed, safety was waiting. Temporary safety. He roared into the darkness and used his shovel as a crutch to haul himself upright. The tool shaft was splintered and jagged where it had snapped like a rotten twig. He took 2 steps forward and collapsed again. They were all dead. Morgan, Bailey, Johnson, Evans, and the Strickland boys. All dead, and not one of them whole. He was damn sure it wasn't just their bodies that were broken either. Behind him, the pine trees swayed violently in the wind, and beyond the trees, Black Pine Creek boiled, churned, and spat icy water into the cold, dark sky. It was hellish. He wished he was back in San Francisco, in bed, nuzzling against Nancy's naked breast. He wished he'd never heard of the Klondike, the Yukon, or Alaska, or of the gold that was supposedly dripping off the trees. He should never have come. The eerie sound of branches fracturing and splitting echoed along the narrow valley as trees were uprooted and pushed aside by the storm. The creaking, groaning, and splintering of the limbs reminded him of the sound Morgan's bones had made when he was dragged from the camp 5 nights ago. It made his stomach churn afresh. He pulled himself upright again and tried to focus on the tool shed. It fell one way, then the other, before it steadied enough for him to take his next steps. He knew Johnson kept a bottle of bourbon inside the shed, secret and hidden. Well, Johnson was dead. His guts stained the rocks at the bottom of the glory hole, and his boots were found hanging just so on his old pick. He had no say in who touched his beloved bourbon now. Clark shuffled through the snow a little quicker. It came up to his knees, but the thought of having a drink urged him on more than any other consideration. What he would do once he got inside the shed, what he would do once he had swallowed as much bourbon as he could, he hadn't given any thought to. There was no point, because he knew that was where it would end. His choices were limited. He fell against the rough logs that Johnson had used to construct the crude shed. It felt solid enough, but that didn't guarantee him protection. He heaved the door against the snow and tumbled inside. The wind slammed the door closed behind him, but since there was no moon, the darkness was the same inside as it was outside. There were lamps in here, shovels, picks, hammers, but no guns. The Strickland boys had the muzzle-loading shotguns they used in the war, but they had been about as effective as throwing pine cones in the wind. They were the last to go, Henry and Samuel Strickland, tempted, like the rest of them, by the gold, tempted to stay just a little too long as the winter slithered down the mountains and fell on them with a swift and brutal kick in the ass. Farther down the valley, Miller and his crew had gone back home 3 weeks ago, when the first snow came and his pockets were so full of gold he jangled all the way back to California. That's what they should have done, called it quits. But they were greedy.